Part 1. The Overture of Silence, The Misunderstood Vacuum, and Machiavelli's Whisper. Opening sequence. The visual is a vintage film stock, complete with grain and light leaks. The sound of a mechanical typewriter clacks as a quote from Niccolò Machiavelli appears, word by word. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Narrator voices deep, magnetic, with a deliberate, powerful cadence. In the cacophony of the modern world, we are governed by a visceral, primal urge to fill the void. Picture the scene. A high-stakes boardroom, a question, sharp as a sword, is thrust directly at your core. In an instant, the very air in the room seems to vanish, and every eye converges into a single incinerating gaze fixed upon you. Time elongates, stretching into a tense eternity where each passing second of silence is a relentless drumbeat against the nerves of everyone present. What is your first instinct? Is it to precipitously scour the archives of your mind for any relevant phrase, to hastily assemble a response, to shatter this suffocating stillness with the sheer velocity of words? This impulse is almost a physiological reflex. We are conditioned to fear silence, for it has come to symbolize ignorance, hesitation, or a lack of confidence. In an age where existence is quantified by likes and comments, where instant messaging culture demands an immediate reply, silence is tragically misconstrued as absence, as a vacuum of power. We prattle on, desperate to articulate, eager to unleash a torrent of verbiage to assert our value, defend our positions, or simply to alleviate the pervasive anxiety of social interaction. We behave like a panicked actor who has forgotten their lines under the spotlight, resorting to a meaningless monologue to mask the emptiness of the stage. But what if I told you that this very instinct, this compulsion to fill the silences precisely the moment you surrender your power, the moment you relinquish your advantage? What if silence, far from being a sign of weakness, is in fact a meticulously calibrated, devastatingly potent weapon? To comprehend this mystery, we must journey back 5 centuries, to the heart of Renaissance Florence, and attune our ears to the whisperings of a man as controversial as he was profoundly insightful into the human condition, Niccolò Machiavelli. This diplomat and philosopher, steeped in the unforgiving games of power, saw through the flimsy veneer of appearances to the true mechanics of influence. In his immortal treatise, The Prince, he coolly observed that the common mass is invariably captivated by what it sees on the surface, and that our world is populated, in the main, by this very crowd. This assertion is far more than a simple dismissal of the populace. It is the key to a profound strategic truth. The exercise of power is, to a large extent, a game of perception management. People judge you not on the totality of your inner reality, but on the curated facade you choose to present. And words are but one element of this facade, often the most unreliable and easily manipulated. The true mastery of strategy, therefore, is found not in what great figures say, but in what they choose not to say, and more importantly, when, where, and why they choose to remain silent. What Machiavelli championed was a form of strategic silence. This is not the fearful retreat of the timid or the awkward pause of the socially inept. It is an active, purposeful non-action. It is a reservoir of accumulating power, a scalpel for precise observation, and an invisible hand that guides the psychology of your counterpart. It transforms silence from a passive state of being into an offensive strategic instrument. Today, we will delve into this most overlooked, yet most lethal, of Machiavelli's laws of power. We will uncover how, in a world that cannot stop talking, the command of silence can make you the one who truly dictates the tempo and controls the game. This is not merely an echo from history. It is the ultimate revelation for our contemporary lives, our careers, and our relationships. Are you ready? Let our silent revolution begin. Part 2. The Psychological Battlefield. 3 effects that reveal the power within. To truly wield the wisdom of Machiavelli, we must move beyond mere quotation. We must dissect the psychological principles that underpin his strategies. While Machiavelli may not have used the vocabulary of modern psychology, His intuitive genius for human nature allowed him to grasp precisely why silence is such a formidable tool of power. This power is rooted in three fundamental psychological effects that operate deep within the human psyche. First, the masterful exploitation of the self-disclosure bias. Psychological studies have consistently shown a principle of reciprocity in human communication. When one person shares personal information, the other feels an implicit, often unconscious, pressure to reciprocate with a similar level of openness to maintain relational equilibrium. Strategic silence is the reverse engineering of this bias. Imagine a critical business negotiation. After presenting a key term, you fall silent, your gaze steady and unwavering. What is happening in your counterpart's mind? Your silence has ruptured the expected rhythm of reciprocity, creating an information deficit. Their brain will instinctively scramble to close this gap. They will begin to speculate, why isn't he speaking? Was my offer insulting? Does he have a competing offer I'm unaware of? To alleviate their discomfort and to coax a reaction from you, they are highly likely to begin over-explaining their position, revealing more information, and may even make preemptive concessions. They will volunteer bargaining chips they had intended to hold back, all in an effort to break your quiet resolve. In this exchange, you have spoken nothing, yet you have won a bloodless victory, securing invaluable intelligence and establishing an asymmetric information advantage. You have become a black hole of information, absorbing everything, revealing nothing, while your opponent, in their anxiety, lays their cards on the table. Second, the precise manipulation of the ambiguity effect. The human mind is hardwired to abhor uncertainty. When faced with an ambiguous situation, we instinctively rush to fill the void with our own narratives, fears, and assumptions to create a coherent story. Silence is the ultimate instrument for creating strategic ambiguity. It is like the work of a minimalist artist who, with a few sparse strokes, ignites a universe of interpretation in the mind of the viewer. When you remain silent at a critical juncture, your rivals, your colleagues, even your subordinates will launch an internal what-if analysis. Projecting their own deepest anxieties onto your silence, a competitor might interpret your quietude as a sign of a grand, unseen strategy, causing them to become cautious and hesitant. An employee, after presenting a proposal, might see your silence as a tacit critique of its flaws, prompting them to proactively identify and fix weaknesses you never even had to mention. Machiavelli understood this profoundly. Silence cloaks you in an aura of mystique, making your stature seem larger and more formidable in the minds of others. They will imagine you to be more powerful, more intelligent, and more prepared than you may actually be. You have done nothing, and yet you have successfully deployed a psychological army on their own mental battlefield. They are no longer playing against you. They are playing against the magnified, intimidating projection of you that they themselves have created. Third, the ruthless leverage of loss aversion. The groundbreaking work of Nobel laureates Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky identified the powerful cognitive bias of loss aversion. The pain of losing something is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. The sting of losing $100 is far more potent than the joy of finding $100. Strategic silence is the perfect fulcrum to exploit this psychological lever. In a heated debate or a high-stakes game, when you abruptly withdraw your verbal participation, you create the palpable threat that the entire interaction could collapse. This ignites your counterpart's loss aversion. They fear losing a potential deal, a crucial relationship, or the chance to reach an agreement. This fear of loss will compel them to act, often irrationally, perhaps by softening their stance or accepting less than ideal terms, simply to avoid the total loss of the negotiation failing. A sudden, calculated silence is like a calm check in a game of poker. It carries no overt threat, but the implied possibility I might walk away from this table at any moment is enough to exert immense pressure on an opponent with a weaker hand. In their desperation to keep you in the game, they will often pay a higher price. The self-disclosure bias, the ambiguity effect, and loss aversion, these three psychological weapons, form the devastating arsenal of strategic silence. They allow you to shape your opponent's emotions, extract information, and ultimately influence their decisions, all without expending any tangible resources. This is the essence of Machiavellianism, achieving the maximum strategic outcome with the minimum possible cost. Understanding these principles is the first step in your transformation from a reactive talker to a proactive strategist of silence. Part 3. The Playbook of Silence. From the negotiation table to the pinnacle of power. The true value of profound theory is revealed in the breadth of its practical application. The Machiavellian law of silence is not an abstract concept for the ivory tower. It is a battle-tested playbook for gaining a decisive edge in the real world. From corporate negotiations to career advancement, from the art of leadership to the cultivation of personal charisma, the applications of strategic silence are as varied as they are potent. Scenario Y. The moment of gold at the negotiation table. Negotiation is, at its core, a war of information. The party with more complete and accurate intelligence holds the greater power. Let us construct a concrete example. Alex, the founder of a promising tech startup, is in a crucial funding meeting with a venture capitalist. The investor lays out an offer with a valuation and a series of terms that are, in Alex's view, quite demanding. The average founder would immediately begin to argue, to debate each point, to try and persuade the investor with a barrage of words. But Alex, a student of Machiavelli, does something different. After hearing all the terms, he offers no immediate response. He leans back slightly, picks up his water glass, takes a slow, deliberate sip, and places it back on the table with a soft, audible click. He looks at the investor, his expression calm and unreadable, and says nothing. This silence, lasting no more than 15 seconds, unleashes a torrent of speculation in the investor's mind. Did I lowball the valuation? Do they have other term sheets? Are these terms a deal breaker? To avoid losing the deal, loss aversion, and to decipher Alex's true position, ambiguity effect, the investor is highly likely to break the silence first. Of course, these are just opening terms. We have flexibility, especially on the board seat arrangement. Notice what has happened. With a single, well-timed pause, Alex has seized control of the negotiation's momentum. He has not revealed his own bottom line, but has instead compelled his counterpart to reveal their room for concession. This is the raw power of silence in action. Scenario 2. Gravity and space in leadership. An exceptional leader is never the one who is constantly issuing commands. As Machiavelli noted, a prince who is too accessible and involved in every minor detail loses his mystique and authority, breeding contempt among his subjects. Strategic silence is a vital tool for forging leadership gravity. Consider a team manager, Sarah. When a team member approaches her with a complex problem, she resists the urge to immediately provide a solution. She listens intently to the entire report, then pauses, perhaps tapping her pen lightly on her notebook. This brief silence sends several powerful messages. First, it communicates that Sarah is engaged in deep thought, not making a rash judgment, which adds perceived weight to her eventual decision. Second, it creates a crucial window for the team member to self-reflect. Often, in the process of articulating a problem to a superior, the solution begins to crystallize in the speaker's own mind. Sarah's silence provides the space for her team's autonomy and problem-solving skills to flourish. When she finally does speak, her words will be heard with greater attention because they are a scarce and considered resource. Conversely, a leader who always rushes in with an answer not only stifles their team's initiative, but also traps themselves in a cycle of firefighting, leading to burnout. Through the selective use of silence, a leader transforms their role from problem solver to thought catalyst, a far more advanced and sustainable form of leadership. Scenario 3. The gravitational field in personal relationships. In our personal lives, we often believe that being talkative and outgoing is the key to building connections. Machiavellian realism, however, teaches us that an excess of words can dilute one's charisma. A person who lays all their cards on the table immediately becomes predictable and, ultimately, less interesting. Strategic silence can create a powerful, personal, gravitational field. In a social setting, when you act as an exceptional listener, using focused eye contact and timely pauses to encourage another to speak, That person feels deeply seen and understood. They derive immense satisfaction from the interaction and, by extension, form a strong positive association with you. More critically, your reticence sparks curiosity. Others will wonder, this person seems so composed, so thoughtful. What are they really thinking? This allure of the unknown is infinitely more potent than a torrent of self-promotion. You don't need to perform. Your silence itself becomes a quiet declaration of confidence and inner depth. It shifts your position from a seeker of validation to an enigma to be discovered. Whether in the heat of negotiation, the complexities of power dynamics, or the subtleties of human connection, strategic silence is the master key that can turn the lock. It demands that you suppress the urge to express, that you govern emotion with reason, and that you wield silence as an active, powerful, and deliberate force. This is the living, breathing echo of Machiavelli's wisdom in the 21st century. Part 4. The Moral Compass and the Ultimate Wisdom of Silence. To discuss Machiavelli is to inevitably confront the profound moral gray area inherent in his strategies. Any powerful instrument can be used for construction or for destruction, and the double-edged sword of strategic silence is no exception. To explore its application is to be obligated to define its ethical boundaries and to aspire to its highest wisdom. The ethical tightrope. The distinction between influence and manipulation. The moral standing of strategic silence is ultimately determined by two crucial factors: intent and outcome. When silence is employed to facilitate a better outcome, such as a leader creating space for their team's growth, or a negotiator preventing a mutually destructive emotional impasse, functions as a positive and constructive tool of influence. The intent is beneficial, and the result aims for a collective good. However, when the intent of silence shifts to pure deception for selfish gain, it descends into the abyss of manipulation. This includes maliciously withholding critical information to cause another's failure, or using the silent treatment in a relationship as a form of punishment and emotional control. This kind of silence, designed to exploit another's informational disadvantage or emotional vulnerability for one's own unethical ends, is fundamentally different from the ruthless pragmatism Machiavelli described. It lacks a higher, even if cold, justification of a greater good, such as the preservation of the state. Machiavelli is often mischaracterized as a teacher of amoral ends, justify the means, ruthlessness. A more accurate reading presents him as an arch-realist. He was not prescribing how power should operate in an ideal world, but rather dissecting how it actually operates in this one. He hands you a scalpel to understand the anatomy of human nature. Whether you use that scalpel to heal or to harm, the choice remains yours. A true strategist understands not only how to use their tools, but also the ethical framework within which they must operate. The ultimate wisdom. Ascending from tactic to a state of being. The mastery of strategic silence should not be an end in itself, a mere collection of victories. It should be a path toward a higher strategic plane of existence. This is the wisdom of choice. 1. The choice of non-engagement. In a world filled with endless disputes, arguments, and trivial conflicts, the most powerful strategy is often to remain silent and refuse to be drawn in. This not only conserves your most precious resources, time, and mental energy, but also maintains a position of superior perspective. Your silence declares that the game itself is unworthy of your participation, which is in itself a profound display of power. 2. The choice to make words matter. When you cultivate the habit of silence, your every utterance gains weight and significance. Just as gold is valued for its scarcity, your words become precious for their economy. People will learn to anticipate your speech, to listen closely to your meaning. Your influence will grow exponentially, without you ever raising your voice. 3. The choice to become the observer. The greatest byproduct of silence is the sharpening of observation. When you close your mouth, your eyes and ears open. You begin to notice the subtle tells in another's speech, the flicker of doubt in their body language, the shifting currents of the room's atmosphere. You cease to be a piece on the board and become the player who sees the entire game. 4. The choice to find peace with oneself. The highest form of silence is when it is no longer a weapon to be wielded against the outside world, but a sanctuary for building your inner world. When you are no longer buffeted by the winds of external validation or provoked by the slights of others, your silence ceases to be a strategy and becomes a state, a natural emanation of profound inner strength and tranquility. Machiavelli's lesson, therefore, transcends mere power-seeking. He reveals how, in a world saturated with speech, one can reshape the dynamics of reality by mastering the most fundamental elements of existence: presence and absence, sound and silence. In an era of information overload, where everyone has a megaphone, the value of strategic silence has become more critical than ever. It is a counter-current discipline, a superior skill that demands immense self-control. It is a stark reminder that true power often lies not in how loudly you can speak, but in knowing at which critical moment to command the awe-inspiring, unfathomable power of your silence. Now, when that spotlight turns to you once again, and the world holds its breath, what will you choose? To rush to fill the void, or to let the silence speak for you? Final shot. The camera pulls back from the various art pieces, which begin to dissolve and merge into a vast, deep, and silent cosmic backdrop, leaving only the quiet, majestic flicker of distant stars